radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right, welcome, Fade to Black. How you doing? Today is Tuesday. It's Tuesday, March 5th, 2024. It's a big show tonight. Very excited. Hugh Newman is back with us live from the UK. Yeah, you know, I carry the guilt. I'm just going to let everybody know. I carry the guilt when I have somebody on the show from the UK because it is really early in the morning. And it's an honor and a privilege for somebody to go, yeah, all right, I'll do it because, man, you know, but Hugh let me know before the show. He said, man, I'm going to work till 6 a.m. anyway. So at least some of the guilt has been lifted off of me. Yes, he is live with us tonight from the UK. I want to remind everybody what's going on this week. Tonight, Hugh is with us talking about Göbekli Tepe. Tomorrow night, Dr. Heather Lynn is here, Xenoarchaeology. That's right. The search for ET throughout the universe. Xenoarchaeology tomorrow night with Dr. Heather Lynn. And then Thursday night, first-time guest Brigitte Barclay is with us. And we're going to be talking about her 1993 Brentwood, California abduction. That's right. That's going down Thursday night. Very excited. Huge week here on Fade to Black. And tonight it's about Hugh Newman. And he's got a new book out, which we're going to be talking about tonight and other things. Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe, specifically megaliths. That's Hugh. Hugh is a rock star, and that is the purest definition of rock star. That is Hugh. And we're going to talk about all of his new research. He is an explorer. He's a megalithomaniac. He's the co-author of Giants on Record. He's a regular guest, of course, on Ancient Aliens and Search for the Lost Giants. He lives and hails out of the UK. He is a stone's throw from Stonehenge. He is also the organizer with the Megalithomania conferences and tours. He has spoken at events all around the world, United Kingdom, Malta, France, Peru, Egypt, Bosnia and North America. And like I said, he's coming to us live from the UK. His links are below on social media and on our website. And I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black my good friend. He's right there, Hugh Newman. Hugh, how you doing, brother? Man, it's been a minute.
I'm great. Yeah, I'm thriving at 3 a.m. here. It's absolutely perfect timing.
And when you had said before the show that I stay up all night, and I was asking you, you know, and normally what I get from, yeah, man, I had to get up, I had to make coffee, my head's not clear. You wanted to just redo the studio tonight. I'm like, dude, it's early in the morning. He said, no, this is when I work, church. This is when it gets done. And there's a lot to be said about that for researchers. My best stuff comes to me at night. It does. I don't know why the brain is relaxed. You're the same way?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's just natural. I can't. It's really annoying when you have to get up and do things in the daytime. But no, it's great. I mean, I've got this. I kind of go into this sort of state of kind of just peacefulness and focus, and I could just get my stuff done. I mean, my mentor and brilliant late author John Michel used to do that. He had a kind of time between midnight and 4 a.m. where he got all his books written, and I kind of follow that, you know, naturally. It's kind of it frustrates people when they want to do things in the morning, though. I'll tell you that.
Now, what do you do? I don't know how. I want to get into the book as quick as we can because we have a lot to discuss with your latest research. But I am surprised that you and I, especially over the last couple of years, haven't run into each other at an airport in some country, because you and I follow each other's stuff, and we're literally, going in opposite directions around the world. What does that do for you with your sleep habits when you've got to go to Cairo or Lima, and get up? You're in Turkey, and it throws off. Does that mess with you?
No, not used to, but not anymore. I always have boxes of melatonin just to knock me out when I need to. But yeah, no, you just adjust. You just adjust as quickly as you can. It's fine. I mean, I thrive on traveling. I love exploring. I love getting around the world. I can't stay at home for too long. I try and stay here and write my books, but you just get to a point where you just got to get out and explore and look at these ancient sites, because there's a whole world to explore, as you know. So yeah, it's got to be done.
Yeah, there is. Okay, I'll tell you this. This is my traveling tip for you, right? And for everybody out there, ignore the clocks. That's what I do. Dude, get up for breakfast. Don't. Oh man, it's jet lag. I should stay in bed all day. I need to get caught up. No, I immediately, no matter what time zone I'm in, I just go on their clock. That's it. I just put it out of my mind. I'm not saying that it doesn't cause a certain amount of schizophrenia, but that works for me. I just immediately, wherever I'm at, I just obey the clock at that location.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I hate missing on tours or when you're exploring. Breakfasts are good, but when I'm at home, I don't even eat till like 5 p.m. or something. So it's a bit different when you're out and about. You need your sustenance, and yeah, I agree with you. You just kind of get up for breakfast. You just focus. You have to do, when you're traveling, you have to do things in the daytime. It's like the opposite of when I'm at
Right.
home. Get most things done when it's dark.
Yeah, and now I used to, and you and I have done a lot of shows and events together over the years. And, so if I push back the clock, say 10 years ago, 8 years ago, I was always asking the questions. Now, I thought that once, I'm going to be back in Peru here in a couple of months. I'm going back to Egypt again. This will be my third trip. And I recently just got back from the UK too, as well. But anyway, that going to these sites, that all the questions that I ask of you over the years would be answered. And I found the opposite to be true, that you walk away scratching your head going, man, what is going on? And that's the crazy part. And for the audience that has never been to some crazy megalithic site to see it for yourself, they don't really understand that vibe. But you get that, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an obsessive megalithomaniac. That is it. That's my life, basically. As soon as I kind of got the bug, I became kind of addicted, and it's still the same. I mean, I got back from India a week or two ago. I was there for like 3 weeks, just exploring non-stop. I did my ankle in, but I just kept exploring anyway, and just now it's sort of paying the price of it a little bit. But yeah, you just got to it's not just about researching and writing and things like that. You have to kind of go into these sites. You have to experience, and there's something profound, I think, about them, that they're created as mostly as temples, really. That's been argued about a lot recently, but they're sacred. They've got this energy, they've got this geometry, this kind of astronomy built into it. So you're going into this space which has had like geniuses create it, so you can kind of experience it even now, thousands of years later. So I think there's something to be said for actually, when you get a chance, even if it's just your local megalith or your mound if you're in America, or your pyramid if you're in Egypt or Mexico, just get out to like even small sites and check them out, and just hang out there and just experience it. I think that's a really key part of kind of trying to understand the ancient mindset.
Yeah, and you're right about that. Yes, the Great Pyramid, the Sphinx, Sacsayhuaman. You can, the Machu Picchu. Yes, there are reasons to go there. There's reasons why they are so talked about and so famous. There is that. But going out to these smaller sites and the ones where that aren't necessarily where the tourists or the tour groups are going, get out there and check that out. It is just as impressive and was built with the same intent. And that's something that I enjoy. I went to Amaru Muru, which in Peru is, the key that's the portal that's on the side. And now that's not well, it is big, but it's not bent pyramid big. Right, it's not Machu Picchu big, and you have to intentionally drive and go there to get to that site, and you're probably are going to be the only person there. It is one of the most interesting things you can ever see, and it's tremendously spiritual. And I would never pass that up again if I have an opportunity to go there. But it's not Tiwanaku, right? It's not Pumapunku. It's not Machu Picchu. It's just this little site on the side of the road. And that's, to me, is just as important as anything else, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I hike for miles up mountains and spend days traveling just to look at sometimes a single megalith or a single kind of, like a Marumuru type site where it's a lot smaller. People have never heard of it. I just kind of, it's like it's part of being on a quest. You want to kind of go on the journey, that your ancestors went on to kind of get to these places. It's like a pilgrimage almost, kind of returning to the source. And so I think there's a lot to be said. There's different ways to approach it. You can approach it in, many different ways. So I approach it, very much. I want to film the sites. I want to experience them. I want to fly my drone. I want to meditate there as well. And, once you get the bug, once you become a megalithomaniac, which I'm sure most of your listeners are, that's it. It's kind of like you've always got something to do anywhere in the world. Even when I go on family holidays with all my nieces and nephews and sisters and all this kind of stuff, I always find some sites to go and look at. And my mum's into it as well, so me and her go off and kind of do the thing. Now I've got two of my nephews who are getting into megaliths now as well. So so wherever you go, you can find somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. And now let's start here with there's a pop culture definition of megalith. There is a scientific version of it. Then there's kind of the way that you and I and researchers in the community loosely use the word. And then, so I want your definition of megalithic. Megalithomaniac is a good question too. What is that? But anyway, what's your definition of megalith or megalithic?
Well, megalithic is just anything that's like got big stones. It literally means kind of large boulders, large stones, but that could mean like one standing stone. It can mean like a pyramid because it's got many giant stones in it as well. It could be a stone circle. It could be even like rock carved areas like a Marumuru because they're carving from big stones, that are naturally there in place. So it kind of covers a lot of ground when you're looking at that. But it also represents an era, like the time when they were building stone circles, particularly stone circles and giant megalithic sites. Because, funnily enough, the stone circle culture is the same time as the megalithic pyramids of Egypt. And so you have the same era as well. So there's two variations on that. But being a megalithomaniac, I think that kind of explains itself. This was actually my mentor, John Michel. Again, I mentioned him twice now. He wrote a book called Megalithomania with an exclamation mark in 1982. And the subtitle was, basically the whole book explored the effects that going to megalithic sites, how it makes you crazy and passionate and wanting to measure and understand it in this sort of crazed manner. And you get addicted to them, like antiquarians, archaeologists, artists, everyone else getting kind of obsessed by not understanding or not knowing what these were really about. And I think that's kind of, and he gave us permission to use the name for our conference and our project. And he was involved in the first few conferences before he unfortunately died. But I do recommend people check out John Michel's books. I mean, he is just an absolute master of the subtleties and the sort of almost like philosophical way of understanding these megalithic sites.
Now, my second question is, after doing all of this research, and I get this question all the time. You get this question all the time. So what's your favorite site? What can I expect when I go there? What's going to happen to me? Okay, well, I'm not going to ask you those because you're just going to repeat what you've answered 1,000 times before. But after all of the research, do you have a specific site that resonates more with you than the others?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, there's a site I've been obsessed by. It's actually part of the title of the new book. It's called Karahan Tepe. This is the sister site to Göbekli Tepe. I know we're going to talk a bit more about this through this whole kind of interview. But Karahan Tepe, there's something about that place because it's got this magical thing about it. The fact that it was covered over and vanished from existence for like 9,000 years or something, it's only just been uncovered, is astonishing in its own right. And what they've, even though they've only uncovered a few percent of it, like 3 to 5% of it, what is coming out of that is just incredible. This is 11,400 years old, and there's just something about the location, the landscape. It's like this alien kind of Mars landscape. There's nothing around. It's like dead, kind of rocky, kind of limestone mountains called the Tectec. And it's just something magical. And then when me and JJ made the discovery of the winter solstice thing, that completely stunned us. First people to probably see that since it was covered over thousands of years ago. And that was like, and that made it really special because it was all serendipitous. It was all like synchronicity that got us to witness that. I mean, if certain things hadn't have occurred and I hadn't got in trouble the day before, for instance, we would never have seen it, And so we made this discovery by pure kind of like, not luck, it's like synchronicity, things just falling into place as they should. And so that created this kind of magic. So every time I go back there, I have this sort of magical feeling about it. So, I mean, I get that I must admit, there's dozens of sites. I get close to that. So don't get me wrong. It's not like the only one. I get excited. It's like, they're like toy shops going to megalithic sites. So, it's like a kid in a toy shop, you know what I mean? You kind of get there.
I do.
You just want to know everything and understand, explore, look at everything. You go into the zone, you go into the present moment, focus. And I think that's, when you got that kind of buzz from these places, there's something special about them.
You know what I enjoy? I'm going to show the cover of the book in just a second. This is going to sound really weird, but this is me. I check out, no matter what site I'm at, it doesn't matter, the steps. You're going to encounter steps. There isn't a megalithic, right? There isn't one where you don't have some stepping to do. But I look at the construction of the steps and how they were done. Some are small, some are big, some are wide, some are multiple stones, some are single stones. It doesn't matter, but I really study the steps. And you have a lot of time to study those steps because in some cases you're doing 300, 400, 500 of them to get to the location that you're going to. And this is why I'm fascinated with it. Steps and windows, I think, are part of our DNA, right? Because it doesn't matter if we're talking about North, Central, South America, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Asia, Norway, right? It doesn't pick Orkney Islands. I don't care. They developed this technology, this engineering feat, stairs, on their own. And so is it in our DNA to do this? And I'm fascinated with that. Or was everybody taught the idea of a window and stairs and then they repeated it? I don't know. But I'm fascinated with that concept.
Yeah, that's an interesting one actually. You got like Machu Picchu, it's got steps and windows everywhere. As a site, I just published a video earlier on my YouTube channel about this site in Spain, which is a perfect example of that. It's called Castro de Ulica. It's about it's 50 miles from Madrid. You have to climb a mountain to get there. Basically, it takes like an hour and a half hiking to get there, and then there's this one outcrop. Really, the main part of it is one outcrop. It's no bigger than a large room, but it's this kind of almost pyramid-shaped block with just two sets of steps going up to the top with niches and stuff carved out of it, and that's it. Then over on the other side, this is all like one large piece of bedrock. They've got like almost like a wall, almost like a polygonal wall with 2 or 3 blocks, but it's got clearly a window in it as well. So you mentioned this, and there's actually a site I visited a few months ago. I actually made a video about it. But that's what I mean. So what is that all about? Why would you go? Why would you put that on top of a mountain in the middle of nowhere, build a massive wall around it as well, and all these other features there are there as well, nubs as well even? What is going on? Why did they have to have the steps? Why can't they just climb up? Why do they have to carve out the granite?
Back to my point, and we can repeat this all night long. You walk away with more questions than answers. You might not get any answers at all. But when you go and you see it, then you just build up question after question after question. And that's the fascinating part about all of this. Let me bring up the cover of the book because I got a bone to pick with you. Just right here, out of the gate, Hugh, out of the gate. Okay, so here's the book. And by the way, everybody, you can go Megalithomania. The links are below and go after the show tonight. You're going to want to get this book. It is absolutely amazing. This is the cover. And the cover is wrong, Hugh. Okay? Let me tell you what it should say. All right? Hugh's already ready to jump through the phone from Stonehenge to LA. It should say Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe, the world's first megaliths that we have found so far. You know what I mean? Because there's more. And the fact that Gobekli Tepe and all of the tepes exist with that time period, and we've got to give huge thanks to Klaus Schmidt and those around him for this to come along in 1995, because before that, we were still in the Mesopotamia, Giza Plateau, start of everything world, and this changed everything. And there must be more. This is just the oldest that we found so far, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I've had a lot of people complain about the title actually, but to be honest with you, I insisted to my publisher I wanted that title because I wanted to like push people's buttons with it as well, make them talk about it. And so that's one of the reasons I kind of stuck with it, because there was when you mentioned Klaus Schmidt, when the first big thing came out about Göbekli Tepe, it was called Göbekli Tepe, the world's first temple. So I wanted to kind of honor him and call it the world's first megaliths, and kind of carry it on from there. And I know there might be sites that are older, this, that, and the other. Even in the book, I talk about sites which are a bit older than Göbekli Tepe, but they're all in the same region. They're all in the same Taş Tepeler region, southeast Turkey. But the other thing why is I personally don't think they're going to find any verified megalithic sites older than this, really. In a serious note here, because these were buried, for starters. These were buried deep in the ground. There's a big, deliberately covered over at the end of their use, like 8,000-9,000 years ago, and that was right at the end of the last ice age as well. So there wasn't much. There wasn't going to be much megalith building going on during the ice age, I don't think. But they started then and there just after the end of the last ice age, and the fact they were buried, it preserved them. So the only way you're going to find anything that old if it was deliberately buried. I don't think anywhere else on the planet they really did this, and so this is why I think for a long time the Göbekli Tepe and the sites nearby are going to be the earliest megalithic sites. That's my kind of. I kind of understood that when I chose the title as well. I didn't just say it as a controversy thing. I kind of wanted to. I believe that's possibly going to be the case.
Okay, except That's what Mark Lerner said. And that's what everybody else insisted on in 1992 about Sumer and Giza, that 3000 BC was the start of everything. And there's nothing else out there. It doesn't exist. And when you find it, come and talk to us. But until then, there's nothing. There's no more conversation about this. And then what happens? Gobekli Tepe, 7,000 years before Giza. Not a couple of months, not 100 years, not a millennia, but 7,000 years older. So that would suggest to me that the possibilities of something crazy old being discovered, not just 10,000 BC old, but something crazy old to be discovered. I think it's out there, and we're going to find it. And science is nothing but a series of corrections, like what happened in 1992. To Shock and John Anthony West.
Okay, well, if that happens, Jimmy, I will change the title of the book slightly.
And because I want that. And you know why? I feel that, and you've been dealing with this, Hugh. There's the dogma, right? It's just repeated over and over and over again, and pounded into us until it becomes truth. And then when something comes along that upsets that or changes that, that's the fight. And that's what Shock was up against, and John Anthony West and others, including yourself, that constantly being bashed and ridiculed, pseudoscience, pseudo-archaeology, right? Pseudo-historians. And then you get something like Gobekli Tepe, and it silences them. Well, we need to continue to do that, and we need to continue to rewrite that dogma.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, you remember, you talk about Mark Lerner and Robert Schock, all this kind of stuff, like back in the mid-90s when John Anthony West, Robert Schock, Hancock and all that lot were putting their books out. There was a big thing out that Mark Lerner put out that said there's nothing to prove that this is like 10,500 years old, the Sphinx, the dating they were trying to put towards it and things like this. There's no smoking gun, there's nothing. And then literally like that, I think that year he said that, Göbekli Tepe was started to be dug up in the mid-1990s. 1994 was the first kind of realization there was something special there, even though it was actually known about in 1963 as well. But it wasn't until the mid-90s. So, and then when it came out and was announced to the world in 2000, it blew everything apart. So I think it's important. Yeah, I mean. The other thing is, it's like, Göbekli Tepe, as the one site we'll just focus on, is like only 5, maybe 7% of it's been uncovered. There could be deeper layers. There could be other areas that go back even further, within that particular site, itself. I mean, even Klaus Schmidt, we met him once, I think it was in 2014 or 15, when we went over there, me and Andrew Collins. We met him when we were taking a group out there. And he said to us openly, he said, look, I think we're going to find stuff that's 14,000 years old at this site. Right. He was saying that directly. So that's going into the Ice Age. That's a whole, and that fits in with what Graham Hancock has put out in his books and in Ancient Apocalypse. And so, yeah, there might be older stuff coming out, but to me, it's going to be right there. It's going to be that area where it's going to come out. So therefore, my book title will still function.
and now. Staying on Gobekli Tepe, the reasons for it is what I want to discuss. What is it? There's a lot of theories out there. There's a lot of debate. So let's discuss that first. But I've got a sneeze coming. Oh, man. What? Okay. Ignore it like I ignore the clocks in Cairo. In Jeddah, right? Ignore the clocks. Is this, no matter how you present it as to its function, that doesn't change the fact that it was built, and it would indicate just constructed, and it would indicate that it's not necessarily the hunter-gatherer dogma that it is a representation of organization, of community, of agriculture, of domestication of not only wheat and other things, possibly, but there was organization there, animals. There was a community leader and technology to quarry, engineer, carve, and then arts and entertainment. To do the reliefs in 3D wasn't supposed to exist. So it shows me the most important part about the site is not what it was, but who built it, and that they were advanced. This wasn't something that was some nomadic tribe. They stopped and built this over a long, long period of time. So that takes out the nomadic roaming tribes element of this. I think that's the most important part. So do you agree with that there was organization involved? And if that's the case, then why did they build it and what was it for?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, this is one of the most unique sites on the planet. I mean, if it was built at the same time as Stonehenge, if it was built 2,000 years ago, it would be talked about. It would be impressive. People would want to visit it. But the fact that it's twice as old, at least, as Stonehenge, even more so, 7,000 years before. So when Stonehenge was being built, this was a super ancient site that had been completely forgotten about. So the age of it makes it so crazy. I mean, we're talking like, just in case people aren't aware, there's only a small part been excavated, but there are at least 20 stone circle enclosures at Göbekli Tepe. Some of them are even larger. There's larger ones that haven't been excavated yet. They found the carving out sections of it from bedrock. You get a lot of that at Karahan Tepe. They're actually carving into the bedrock with hypogeum kind of pools and caves and carvings and like 3D, like sticking out of the ground. And so they had a kind of mastery of working with this limestone to a really high level. If you look at some of the relief carvings, and to think they're to kind of remove the stone to leave these carvings in place as well is astonishing. But yeah, I mean, and the fact that many of them are, which is I cover in the book, and I'm going to go into more detail in my next book. There's very accurate, very sophisticated sacred geometry being used there. There's specific measurement systems. There's acoustic properties that have been noted and profoundly worked with there. And then there's the kind of alignments with the stars, the sun, and the moon, even possibly precession. I mean, the fact that we discovered and proved there's a working winter solstice alignment at Karahan Tepe means they definitely were doing it at Göbekli Tepe. I mean, look at Andrew Collins' research. Look at other people talking about Sirius and Orion. Robert Schoch's talked about this and everything else. And so these were star watchers. These were like recording the heavens. These were recording time. And when you get into that space, then you can develop agriculture. You can have a calendar. You can have a farming calendar. You know when to hunt properly. You know when to go and get your hunt your gazelles and things like this. So there's all these innovations occurring simultaneously in one place, and people are questioning how that could have happened. Well, firstly, you got the end of the last ice age. You suddenly got a warming of the weather. You got people a lot happier. They're surviving now. There's abundance. There's like food everywhere, everything else. But it's proof that they were brewing beer there. They were even brewing wine at Kortik Tepe, another site up near the Tigris River. And so they were using, things like this to get into altered states. There's also possible speculative evidence they were using psychedelics as well, which is a whole other realm. And these were some of the first people to possibly do so. There's mushroom symbolism. They were working with aurochs and cattle, so that you get the dung to grow, magic mushrooms would grow on. You have a type of grass that grows in that whole area, which has acacia in it, which if you burn in high quantities, you have sort of DMT smoke coming out of it. And I imagine they were doing that in these small enclosed spaces and things like this. And so also they were brewing beer, which could have had ergot in it as well. And so that's like a psychedelic kind of fungus that LSD was synthesized from. And they found that actually at Rakachek Cave in Israel, which is a 14,000-year-old site actually, where they had proof they were using ergot as a psychedelic kind of shamanic thing. And there was a skull cult there, death cult, which is now they found evidence of at Göbekli Tepe as well. So there's all these different things about how they could have come up with these ideas. And you look at the abstract artistic artwork all over the site in 3D relief. This is very strange. This is very abstract. It's very artistic. It's very particular. It's very psychedelic, in my opinion. It's almost like come from the mind of someone kind of having an inspired moment. And that style spec maintained itself for at least 1,500 years in that whole region. The same T-pillars, the humanoid things with the arms coming down the side, hands touching the belly, 3D relief carvings, the H's and everything else. And so why did that same style spec continue at all these other sites? There's like, officially there's 11 other sites, but in reality there's possibly 100. So how did that happen? Why did that grow like that? Why did they maintain this same design? It's almost like this sudden burst of innovation and kind of creative force kind of happened. I think that's, could be put down to more than just a change in the weather.
Well, totally. And so to clearly suggest, and we all get it, astronomy, mathematics, engineering, the arts, astronomy, all of this knowledge goes against the grain of what we are told Stone Age man was, right? Wearing animal skins, club, walking around digging for seeds in the dirt, right? That was Stone Age man. And clearly that is not the case here. It's the exact opposite of that. How can there be knowledge of acoustics? How is that possible? And okay, so let's stay there about going against the grain of what we've been taught. You've been to Tiwanaku. There are three, I counted, there's at least 3 stone pillars there that are nearly identical to the T-pillars at Göbekli Tepe. You got the belts, you got the hands, you got the humanoid rectangle domino-shaped pillar, the hands coming around on the belly with a belt and a belt buckle, some H's, right? And and right up the street is Pumapunku with those H blocks. So that's strange in of itself. But to see that at Tiwanaku and other sites around the world, it's not just Tiwanaku. And other sites in that part of the world that have the same representation, T-pillars with humanoid figures. And a belt at 10,000 BC shouldn't exist. Suggest fashion. That's not animal skins. That's not a leopard hanging off of you, right? That's fashion. Look at Urfaman. Urfaman is like Fashion Week in Paris.
And he had a V-neck as well, didn't he? Kind of
V-neck, cool V-neck. Man. Yeah.
Star Trek style kind of thing, kind of like proper garments. Yeah, for sure, proper fashion. But yeah, I mean, the similarities worldwide. I mean, I squeezed it into like 2 pages in the book, but we're going to get into that in the next. But I mean, lots of people have noticed this. Hancock's written about it. He wrote about a site called Kutimbo, which is near Silistani and Cotimbo, actually, in Lake Titicaca, part of Peru, not too far from Marumuru, as you know. And they have 3D relief carvings of animals and different forms and symbols. And you could just place them next to the Göbekli Tepe ones and you couldn't tell the difference. It's quite remarkable. Even in Easter Island, you have the hands touching the navel and traditions of it being the navel. And the name of Göbekli Tepe means the navel. It means the belly. It means the belly hill, the navel hill. And so you have that tradition in Easter Island. You have a navel at the Coricancha, also in Cusco as well, and you have many similarities there as well. I mean, you could kind of go into, you could really go into this and realize before Göbekli Tepe and these sites in southeast Turkey were discovered, all this stuff around the world, people don't know where it possibly came from, but actually now there could be a solution, at least an influence, at least some ideas spread from there, and these could have at least kind of had some influence in different parts of the world.
That's crazy talk, right? And it's probably exactly how it went down. Hugh, okay, no, let's back up. You didn't. The second question was, what's the function? What do you think the function of Göbekli Tepe was or is?
Yeah, okay. Well, there's a few different things which are strong contenders. Right. Firstly, it was, I think people were just tired of roaming around, freezing to death, hunting and trying to survive. They probably realized they could find a good spot. Now the weather got better and kind of build and actually stay there and actually go off and do their hunting, this, that, and the other, as on a practical sense. But I think this is when, you know, you kind of realize, you know, why would they do it? And I think is what one of the big things I mentioned this in a couple of paragraphs in the book, that I believe it was a memory space. It was a memory of all that had come before them, like which they taught and shared in myths and legends and landscape stories, like the song lines of, you know, Aboriginal culture in Australia. They would record their stories through the songs, through the oral tradition, through landscape. And so when they stopped, they realized they wanted to stop doing that. They wanted to put it in, they wanted to sort of focus in one or a few areas and work out from there. They had to put everything they knew, all their knowledge, carve it into one place. And I really believe that that is one of the aspects of this. I also think they were used as sacred sites. These were like temples. I mean, I don't care what the new archaeologists say. They're trying to make them out not to be temples nowadays, but it doesn't make sense to me. You look at the magnitude, the cathedral-like quality of going inside one of these enclosures. It is incredible. And so I think it was a sacred place, but a place where people would teach. They would teach the history, they would teach the knowledge, they would teach the astronomy from these particular spots. It's also notable that the enclosure D, the main enclosure there, they found, these Belgian researchers found a major spiraling magnetic anomaly that naturally occurs. And so they may have built it upon that. And so, because it had some special feeling to them, where you can kind of sense it's like the work of John Burke and Philip Callaghan and others, and people who do dowsing and things like this, Maria Wheatley and others. This is the kind of, they may have sensed something profound there, so they wanted to kind of mark this spot. It may have been a place they'd been to before when they were hunter-gatherers, they were roaming around, and they felt something special, something liminal, something sort of sacred about that. Maybe they seen strange lights there, which magnetic anomalies can manifest. And so I think it was created as a kind of, right, we're going to put everything we know into here. We're going to teach what we know to the new incomers, the next generations, and everything else. And this incorporated the astronomy. But this is when I think when you start building, you kind of get into geometry, you get into measuring, you get into counting, you get into, you know, trying to put things in line with the stars to create shadows and effects and things like this. And so I think there's multiple purposes for it, like same purposes you might have with the stone circles of Britain, but this was a different era, a different mindset. And I think it kind of grew from there when they realized they could actually kind of work together rather than just in little groups.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you, you're suggesting it was a community center. You were teaching, you were gathering there, but not a temple as in a religious aspect or respecting a god as in, you know, temples around the world are specific temples to specific gods. We get that. But that wasn't the focus of Gobekli Tepe. It wasn't a religious site. It wasn't a temple. It was more of a community center, a college, a school, and a library.
Yeah, but maybe a bit of both, though. That's what I think. I think it was like, you know, you have villages with a church in nowadays, whatever, you know. I don't necessarily think people really necessarily lived there as such. I think it was a place they went to, you know, and it was like looked after by some people. Maybe I think they would go and live near where the water sources are. Like there's a place called Yemen Hali, which is in Shanliurfa, where there's a spring. There's another site called Navali Churi, which is next to the Euphrates River or the Kantara stream coming off the river. Another site called Chayanu, next to a river and a stream. So these were much clearly villages and settlements. Whereas I personally think these high up places, these are all in like very high hilltops in the middle of nowhere. It seems these were sanctuaries, but they were also places you go to do things. They weren't necessarily where people actually lived, although the archaeologists nowadays are pushing this idea that these were domestic sites. So I think there's a big kind of, we're learning more as stuff gets uncovered there, but I think it's a mixture of all the things you mentioned, Jimmy, I don't think it's like one thing or not another thing. I think there's like a combination, because I think the two central pillars in the middle, which again, every enclosure, they were kind of representations of some kind of gods, or a god and a goddess, or say the sacred twins, as my partner JJ's been researching, with these myths that go back hundreds of thousands of years. And so there could have been a very ancient mythology. That there's little bits of what you can tap into now, which something JJ's been doing. But also I think they were kind of really into animism. They felt everything, the land was sacred, the animals were sacred. There's a whole kind of, everything had this kind of alive quality, even the rock itself, and everything else, and the water. So I think there's a different way we perceive like religion. It may have been quite different to them.
Stay with me for a second. Stay with me. Okay, sorry about that. I had a quick message on my screen from my web guy. We're streaming, testing the stream to some private areas that we're going to reveal later. And so I'm just letting you, I just got to say, we've ended the stream. No, you haven't. Oh, it's that. Okay, so I was distracted for a minute as I had to click through that. But okay. This is where I start to get a little bit angry at history and the way it's presented to us, because this is pre-metallurgy. That's a very important point. And so to do the reliefs and a quarry and to do this, that to do it allegedly without metal. Okay. All right. Now there have been some metal-ish things found around there, by the way, right? You know about this, which is highly strange to me. It shouldn't exist, but nonetheless, the knowledge of how to do reliefs, cutting into stone, is one thing. Scratching it and grooving it, okay, all right, with an antler, a chicken bone, for 2 or 3 years, whatever you're doing. But to go the opposite direction and to do stuff in relief, and where you are removing stone and leaving something behind in such perfection, suggest you're taught that. You're taught how to do that. And this knowledge had to come from somewhere. And now I'm not saying metallurgy came into play, but I think that they had the tools to do this without messing stuff up. And what's interesting is we haven't found evidence of any of the tools that they used to build Göbekli Tepe. Do you find that strange?
Yeah, no, it's a good point, actually. Yeah, I mean, I think that, that it's said that it is possible to do it, take you ages to do it with like antler picks and things like this, and flint. There's a lot of flint has been found, and obsidian and things like this in the general area. So that's what they claim. But if they can do it with that, then they're geniuses. So it proves they're geniuses if they can do it with that. You know what I mean? So that is mind blowing. If they could do it with simple tools, I mean, I think that a point needs to be made about that. But yeah, there's been very small amounts of natural copper have been found, have been reported and discovered at a place like Chianu, which is up near further north. And I think at one other site as well, I think maybe at Göbekli Tepe or one of the other sites, they actually found this copper, and it was being pounded and shaped into various things. But I don't think, that's not enough, and there's no evidence they were using it to kind of chip and create these kind of these things. But I think what's really interesting, because that they were using this type of limestone they were doing this with, is quite tough limestone. It's not soft, like flaky limestone. It's quite tough, hard to kind of do. So it makes it even more challenging. And then you look at the whole bunch of these beautiful stone plates, not made of limestone, by the way. These are made of sandstone. These are made of types of granodiorite. These are made of very hard basalt, grey basalt, and things like this. Volcanic rock. It's greenstone as well. They're like, some of them are this big, some of them are this big, but they're polished. They're like the polished kind of artifacts you get in Egypt, but from Karahan Tepe, which is like only 200 years younger. pretty much contemporary with Göbekli Tepe. And some of them were actually found at Göbekli Tepe as well. And then they not only that, these were created and like they even carved really beautiful cut marks into them as well. And you look at them and you're like, wow, I mean, how did they polish something that's as hard as granite? What did they use for that? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And then, you know, you can kind of, you know, the more you look into what has been going on at these sites and the more detail you see, you realize these were absolute geniuses. I mean, you just can't deny it. And you have to like question who the hell were these people and where did they really come from? I mean, the only, you know, if you want to go, we maybe we'll get into this, I don't know, but you look at the stories of the Watchers from the Book of Enoch. They could work with stone. They produced different metal tools. They could do carving. They had medicine. They had agriculture and everything else, astronomy, etc., etc. So that's when you get to a point where that's the only way you can explain some of this. You look at the old biblical text, and it talks about this extremely early epoch of these master people, like who are a whole different class, like a priestly elite as such, above everyone else. And you realize maybe that's what was going on. It was like a priestly elite who just had this kind of pre-diluvian knowledge from somewhere. And so so that could be considered as well, you know, that kind, I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but
it doesn't sound crazy. Have you seen, I can't remember who starred in it, was it Christian Bale? Noah, the movie Noah, have you seen it?
Yeah.
Okay, you see how the Watchers are represented there, and now, so the movie tried to, and I feel that it did, you know, to stay close to the biblical narrative. Okay, I get that. Okay, all right, but the Watchers element of that movie was friggin' science fiction. That was like E.T. Crazy Town. And that was the interpretation of the screenwriters that you know wrote the movie, from the way that they interpreted it from the Bible. And I think it's accurate. I do. It's a crazy part of the movie. I was like, what are they suggesting here? But really, when you read the Bible and you see how, okay, I get it. But man, it is science fiction, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that's a weird film actually. That was I did see that, but yeah, that's one of the I mean the way they presented the Watchers like these rock beings like made of rock and kind of moving about like kind of stop animation from the 50s or something. It's kind of weird, but you know if you look at the Book of Enoch, it clearly states that these were just, you know, they were shining ones.
But in the movie, they came from the sky. Remember, smoke?
Yeah, but that's
landed.
That's all we go. So they came down onto Mount Hermon and everything else, you know. And like so like you look in the biblical text, you look at the Book of Enoch. Andrew gets into the Anunnaki a lot, and he's trying to understand, you know, if there's like if you look at the Sumerian myths as well, that's a whole different thing, which kind of has correlations. But yeah, I mean, but you look, the Watchers are fascinating to me because they actually describe different technologies which really are there at Göbekli Tepe and these sites, it seems. And so there could be a connection there. And I think, you know, we have to look at these ancient myths. We have to look at the symbolism. And there's good evidence that they were using some kind of language that was carved at the site as well. There's, I know Robert Schock, his friend Manu, and even JJ have noted that there's a type of script that some of the symbols are Luwian, which is an ancient Hittite script, but only goes back to around 3,000, 2,500 BC at the oldest. So again, that's 7,000 years later than Göbekli Tepe, but there may be some connection there. So if they were developing writing and symbolic language, that's another sign of high civilization. I mean, I actually call this whole area super civilization. That's my kind of nickname for it, because it's a huge area. We're not, just so people know, it's not one site or two sites. We're talking, it's officially 12 sites, but there's definitely 30. There could be 100. Even the archaeologists admitted that recently, because they're now scanning and doing LiDAR and finding so much more. And it stretches 200 kilometers wide, 130 miles wide. And so then you realize you have the same symbolism and techniques, stone cutting technology and everything else going down to Jericho, going down.
Let me pull
Yeah, here we go.
Let me pull this up really quick. This is one of the pages from the book. By the way, the book is beautifully illustrated. It's just so well done. But here it is, and you can see all of the sites. This is Göbekli Tepe right here. Here's Karahan Tepe down here. And so you can see how many sites are in this literally a triangle.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. I mean, you got the Fertile Crescent. That's the famous kind of area where agriculture developed, includes Jericho. It almost goes down to Egypt. But then they call this thing the Triangle d'Or, which is where they realized later, no, this is the area it kind of happened. And this is around Karahan Mountain. Now, this is just north of Göbekli Tepe. This is where the first einkorn wheat was developed. And this all happened right within 200 years of Göbekli Tepe first being built. So within a few hundred years of the first circles being put up at Göbekli Tepe, the first domesticated wheat was then found. So clearly there's a connection, and they found evidence of it at these sites as well. So to me, it's not, they used to think food domestication then inspired them to build sites, but it was the other way around. They actually built the sites, and then they innovated this idea and developed this idea because they kind of like this way of living. It's a bit different to what they were doing before. And so so I think it's people have got it the wrong way around. I think that's generally agreed now, but that is incredible in its own right. So this whole agricultural revolution, which is the biggest shift in like human history, the lifestyle change, is linked with these sites we're talking about. It's directly linked. And it could be the reason why it even happened, like that we're still kind of eating the loaves of bread today.
Yeah, and drinking beer. Let's not joke about that. It's not like a serious thing, man. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. Now, two questions, then we'll take a break and come back and pick up where we're leaving off. Apparently, there was also engineering for irrigation. And now, either it's Stone Age man carrying clubs, right, wearing animal skins in his bare feet and her bare feet, right? Either it's that, the representations at a history museum, a museum of natural history, and you see the caveman and his family, right? Okay. Either it's that, or it's something else entirely. And if we bring in irrigation, and there is at least 3 water sources with the engineering to get water to this part of the countryside, that is a whole nother level of technical knowledge, isn't it?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think they talk about that in the stories of the Anunnaki as well. They talk about irrigation, the Anu gods, and everything else. But yeah, there's even at Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe, there's all loads of channels carved everywhere. They were harvesting rainwater because these two sites in particular were not near any streams or rivers or springs even, and so they had to kind of collect water as best they could and do whatever they. That's why I don't think people live there full time. I think they're going to live by the rivers and streams. But then all these channels, and then they were using that to kind of like put through the landscape in some cases as well. And so they really had it down. But I think the climate was incredibly useful to them as well. It was like almost like the perfect climate occurred suddenly after a horrific ice age. It was like a good amount of rain, sunny, everything grew. It was all like abundance. It was like Garden of Eden, literally. This is the whole kind of theory that this area was actually the Garden of Eden. Even Klaus Schmidt said that. So there's a lot to be said for that as well. But I think it's just a combination of great, climate and incredible innovation changed the world at that time.
Now, to suggest, I was just going to bring up Klaus Schmidt, to suggest that underneath is additional stone circles, then that would indicate to me, and Klaus did say he was thinking 14,000 BC, right? 14,000. That's like an insane suggestion, but he was getting his ideas from his theories, and I understand why. Everything that we have discovered at Gobekli Tepe is the newest. Right, it's the newest. It's right. It was deliberately buried, and so we're undigging it first. It was the last built. It's the newest. Anything else that's underneath it that they are discovering would be older. That's the only conclusion you can come to. Am I wrong?
Well, they got the thing is that their argument that it's the oldest level already is that they've actually got down to the bedrock in the enclosures they've been uncovering. You can't go any lower than the bedrock, but that doesn't mean sites on the other side of the site, parts of circles on the other side of the whole hill, still could be older. It doesn't, they might go down to the bedrock as well, but they might have been built first. So it's just simply we don't know until you get down there and get some excavation and carbon dating done. It's as simple as that. But I mean, if Klaus Schmidt's saying that, and why not? I mean, they found sites near Göbekli Tepe. There's a site called Çakmak Tepe, which is at least 1,000 years older than Göbekli Tepe. There's no megaliths there as such, but it's a site, and it was used. They were carving from the bedrock. They were doing things there. There's two or three sites up near the Tigris River, which is like further to the northeast kind of thing. And there's a whole bunch like Grifila Hoyak, you got Bonchoklu Tala, you got Kortik Tepe, you got Cheanu as well. But the first three I mentioned, they were older than Göbekli Tepe by 1,000 or 1,500 years. And they weren't, there's no T-pillars there, but there were enclosures. They were starting to build things. They were starting to do things. There's even these stones, hand-shaped pebble stones, like the size. They got 3D relief carvings on, which were 1,000 years older than Göbekli Tepe. And it makes you wonder if that influence came down to the southwest to go form around the area of Göbekli Tepe, and there were influences coming in from different places. And so these are settlements that are older than Göbekli Tepe. So there are already stuff that could be older, but I think, and Klaus Schmidt said as well, there could be stuff inside Göbekli Tepe itself, which we just haven't dated yet. You haven't got down,
Right.
Haven't got the evidence yet. So who knows?
Yeah, it's crazy. And now, before the break, I'm looking at the dating of sites coming from the north and going south. And it seems that Göbekli Tepe, and then you just head south, you've got Baalbek, right? You head south through Jerusalem. You've got Iraq and Syria, of course, and then you head south. And then you move into Egypt, and then you move south into Africa, where that, to me, suggests that this culture, this civilization, came from the north and taught as they went. And that's the line. And you can see it. You can see the line coming down. You can go all the way down to Adam's calendar if you want. I don't care. But it just seems that it started from the north and went south. Whereas the accepted idea for this is from the south of Africa, the central part of Africa. That was the start of civilization, and everything went from there. I think it's the opposite. And the evidence is right in front of us. I think history is going to show us being on the right side of that when we run through this.
Yeah, no, you can see it. You can see like a stream of kind of like sort of megalithic sites. There's even stuff still under the water off the coast of Israel. You got Jericho. You can come all the way down into there's even stuff in Egypt, which is like this age. It's the age of Karahan Tepe and Göbekli Tepe. There's Helwan, there's other places, and they found some interesting stuff there. They found some really beautifully carved bowls and plates, like you get at Karahan Tepe, of a similar age in Egypt, which no one really knows about, but they're actually in the museum in Cairo, some of them. And so you got things like that. There are connections. They found Klaus Schmidt and Andrew really into this thing called the Helwan point. It's like a spear point, like a tool, which is very specific way of doing it, which was known about in a place called Helwan in Egypt, which is near, it's 20-30 miles south of Cairo. And exactly the same ones are being found at one of the sites abundantly near Göbekli Tepe. It's actually Yemen Hale, which is in the city of Şanlıurfa. This is where Urfa Man was found. This is where they found these points. And so what is going on there? Was there a connection with Egypt even way back then? I mean, that's just one thing that you can connect these sites with. And like Jericho's a whole other thing. I went to Jericho a few months, before it all kicked off over there. And that is mind blowing. They were carving into bedrock there as well. No real megaliths as such, but they were doing stuff there, which was remarkable. I don't think people quite realize how far and wide this, what I call a super civilization, spread, going in all directions. I mean, south is the most obvious one. You can see stuff happening. But you look, you can look to the west, you can see stuff happening across the Mediterranean, even going into Europe. There was Doggerland was there then. Europe was connected to Britain at this time. You've got post holes just down the road from me next to Stonehenge, like 20 yards from Stonehenge, which prove they're giant wooden posts marking the position of Stonehenge. 8,000 BC, 10,000 years ago. You got just down the road from here, you got Blickmead. This was a major settlement with a natural spring, which is 10,000 years old as well. And so I'm living in this 10,000-year-old landscape, which then blew up 6,000 or 7,000 years later as Stonehenge and all the megalith stuff. So what was going on between those times here? So you can just put it in perspective in your local landscape as well. But it's pretty epic when you start kind of looking at the influences. I mean, I think the whole stone circle culture was a memory of Göbekli Tepe and all the sites in this area. You got the same kind of geometry. I mean, I'm talking about exactly the same kind of geometry, the same measurement systems, proving they must have had a technique for measuring the earth. You've got the magnetism, you've got these astronomical alignments, you've got the style of it all, you've got the placement in the landscape and everything else. It's just astonishing the influence that these places could have had.
Yeah, and then you throw into the mix Karahan. Right? It's just like, wait, it's not supposed to exist. The dating's not right. It's not supposed to exist, but it is there for astronomy. That's its purpose. You can see it. The holes are cut in the stones to line up with the stones on the other side of the circle to look through and look at stars. That's not Stone Age, man. That is high intelligence. I don't know what the purpose was. Was it spiritual? Was it religious? Was it timing? Was it farming? I don't know. But what is astonishing here is that at 8,000, 9,000 BC, a temple like this, a stone circle like this was megalithic, was built, and they bored holes through the pillars. That's insane to me. It shows you, Hugh, that everything we've been taught is wrong. I like all of it. None of it is true, man. None of it is true. You know what? We're going to take a quick break. I want to show one thing that I want to talk about when we come back, and I hope you don't mind me popping this up on the screen. I'm just going to do this. Everybody, we're going to talk about some of the astronomical alignments. I'm going to pull this down when we come back after the break. Our guest tonight, the one and only, live from the UK, Hugh Newman, is with us. Hugh, you stay right there. We're going to take our break. I'm Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now.
My job is not to preach. My job is to take you on this journey.
In a state of passion, nothing negative can happen.
That it's the moons of those planets that would have life.
Sometimes I see, these energies also in your field.
It is our passion and our pleasure.
Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. This is Jimmy Church. Please visit and explore Egypt this October 3rd through the 14th, 2024 with Billy, Elizabeth, myself, and very special guest and the #1 podcaster in the world, Sean Kelly. It's simple to do. Just go to forbiddenknowledge.com and click on upcoming tours, or click on the link below. We'll see you there. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's fade to black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. And right now, if you get a Game Changer membership for a limited time, you will get Fade to Black Blend coffee with your Game Changer membership. That's right. We have 2 t-shirts. We have the original, the classic Fade to Black t-shirt. You know you want one. Post a picture, send it to us. We'll put it in our Fade to Black gallery. And we've got the new official Fade to Black t-shirt drawn by Michael Oming. 2 t-shirts, 2 ways to get them. Get yours today. Everything is in stock. Everything gets autographed. Everything includes shipping. And you're going to get a tracking number. And with a Game Changer membership, you get an email to me. You get unlimited commercial-free downloads of the show. Those are uploaded every single night after the show to the website. So don't delay. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Göbekli Tepe. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right, welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, our guest, Hugh Newman, is with us. We're talking about his new book. You need to get it. It's comprehensive. It's well illustrated, too, as well. You need to get the new book. We're talking about that tonight. It's called Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe, the world's first megaliths. Live from the UK. There he is. Now, Hugh, I want to talk about the astronomical side of this. And before we get there, the biggest pillars are huge. And I can't help but go WTF. And the reason why I say that in such a fashion is that you do that with any major megalithic site when you're looking at tonnage of stones and how they were moved. You have the quarry side of it. That's crazy. All right. Yeah, that's engineering. But then you have to get it from one point to the other. And when you push dates back this far into an arid place that is, well, now today it's southern Turkey. Back then, it wasn't Turkish. I can tell you that. I don't know, Armenian highlands or whatever you want to call it. But without the wheel, without this, without that, how did they move from the quarry site to Göbekli Tepe? You have to have a theory.
Yeah, they were quarrying not about half a mile at Göbekli Tepe anyway, about half a mile from the site. I've actually been to the quarry site. There's a giant megalith still in situ, still half cut out of the stone. I illustrated that in the book as well, and that is huge. I mean, that's like 50 tons, that one. But most of that's uncarved, and that's just a general massive T shape. They might have even made 2 pillars out of it because they're quite thin. The pillars are quite thin. So the weight of them inside Göbekli Tepe is a maximum of about 15 tons, they say. Although it could be a bit less. Some people suggest 10 tons. There's a bit of debate because of the carvings on them, and some of them are still buried slightly and things like this. But yeah, I mean, you got to think about that. I mean, because these are not damaged pillars. These are beautifully cut and dressed, and then transported or transported roughly, then dressed on the site. But that would have taken a huge team. I mean, some people have suggested that they had. I mean, I personally think, and this is a bit out there maybe, but I think they had telekinetic stuff going on. I think they had the power of the mind. This was a different mind people had back then. It was so different to ours. I think they could manipulate reality a lot more differently than we can. We've been conditioned not to, and everything else. And so, but that's just my, one of my pet theories. But in a practical sense, they could have used it when it was cold and icy, and used ice to move it about, rollers, all this kind of stuff. Who knows? I mean, but they did it though. That's the thing, and they did it in abundance as well. But I think one of the most impressive things about these sites as well, when it comes to how they made them, is they were carving into bedrock and like leaving things there, especially at Karahan Tepe, in fact. And so that is impressive. I mean, actually, the pillars, the central pillars in the main enclosure at Gobekli, the bedrock, there's like big kind of square kind of bases they sit in. They're carved. They are actually part of the bedrock. They shaped the whole floor perfectly flat, polished it flat, even put a nice little kind of skirting board around the edge of it, and then left these upright bits with holes in where the pillars would sit, really balanced perfectly. And so that is just insane. I mean, as well, if you think about how much rock they had to move out of the way just to create things like that. So there's different elements of technology we're looking at here.
I just can't wrap my head around it. I mean, the other day, it was Saturday morning, I get up and I'm in my shower. I go to turn off my shower. It's separate from my bathtub, right? I'm in the shower, and the water doesn't turn off, right? I turn and I'm like, oh crap, my shower's still going. I got a problem. So what do I have to do here? Well, I've got to turn off the water to the house. Then I've got to go to Lowe's or Home Depot and go in and get the stuff to go back and repair, right? And do all of it. Okay. I have access to tools. I have access to a tape measure. I have flashlights, right? I've got these things. They didn't have any of that to carve a rectangle square into polished bedrock and tilt up and then line up and then pop into place a 20-ton pillar that's going to stand for the next 10,000 years, right? Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. It's just nuts to think about. And when you go to these sites, everybody, and you see it, that's when the real impact is there. That's the WTF moment, because it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, just to give people a sense of scale, I mean, some of the enclosures are like 60 to 70 feet wide, You know, the pillar, the tallest pillar is 18 feet tall, which is 5.5 meters. So that's the same height. If anyone's ever been inside Stonehenge, it's the same height as Stonehenge. I mean, they're big. I mean, you don't realize until you get inside how big tall the stones are. So that is just like, it's kind of overwhelming when you realize the magnitude. In fact, when you go to Shanlurfa, the nearest city to Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe, in the museum there, I mean, we always take our groups in there and blow their minds because they've done a replica of Enclosure D inside the museum, and you go in there, you're like, oh, this is like an auditorium. It's not like, you can get hundreds of people in there. There could be people all standing up around the edges, huge benches people could be sitting on or standing on. And then this is where the acoustics kick in, because it's proven if you stand in the middle, the acoustics resonate, even the pillars resonate to the human voice. This has been proven scientifically now. And so this was incredible. This is like the first, I believe Klaus Schmidt, the world's first temple, but this is like the first cathedral. This is like the first kind of epic acoustic space where performance and great events took place. It wasn't just like a kind of a spiritual place. It had other elements to it. It could be like concerts here. It could have been like drumming and everything else, wild dancing and things like this, all in their psychedelic beer they're drinking. It's kind of like you can imagine. It would have been an amazing place.
And it wasn't something that has been suggested about so many other megalithic sites around the world, that it was some type of defensive structure too as well. But there haven't been any weapons or anything like that discovered in or around Gobekli Tepe, have there?
No, they haven't. No, there's no evidence of any like warfare or anything like that. But they have found like a place called Cheonu, bring that site up again. They have found something called like a skull building there, where they think possibly people might have been sacrificed. I mean, it's a theory, but they've also found heads removed from skeletons at Göbekli Tepe, for instance. They found trepanning type stuff at some sites like Çatalhöyük. They found that as well. So there might have been some kind of skull cult, but we don't know if it was like sacrificial. But I don't think there's any like major evidence of real kind of warfare as such. I don't think there's anything like that I'm aware of.
Now, do you believe? I'm going to pull up this illustration in just a second. Well, actually, I'll pull it up while I mention this. I have always thought that the site might have had roofs. And when you look at the top of the T-pillars and the grooves that are up there, it's almost like rafters, right? And so I kind of see that, and I've always pictured that in my mind's eye, that maybe that these were covered and that they weren't open air. But if my ideas are correct, then the astronomy side of it is not. If the astronomy side of it is correct and your alignments are just amazing, then they weren't roofed. Okay, so I'm okay with that. Let's put this together. But what were the grooves for and the holes on the top of the pillars then?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. This comes up quite a lot because the archaeologists generally believe nowadays there were roofs. But firstly, they found no wood. They found no evidence of wood. They claim they found a kind of imprint of where wood would have been. But only like 3 pillars have got like grooves on them. And these, where the grooves are, they're on top of damaged pillars that were previously damaged, and then the grooves were put in. So if they had roofs, they were probably added later. The cut marks you mentioned on top of lots of the pillars, these are linked in tradition with goddess kind of worship type stuff. This is like an actual kind of libation spot. This isn't. You don't put wood in like cut marks. It doesn't make any sense. So that doesn't make sense for roofs to go on top of there. But there's there's a case for roofs and there's a case against it, and there's a case where both could have coexisted, and you could have had the astronomy working as well. So there's no wood in the area for miles, absolutely miles away. You have to lug it a long way to kind of build anything like that. And at that time anyway. And secondly, no evidence of any has been found. And thirdly, which is you can look at both sides of it, because I've got a friend called Kevin Esslinger who's done a huge reconstruction of a wooden roof over Karahan Tepe, which is even bigger, the main enclosure, than Göbekli Tepe. And I worked with him on this, and I worked with a couple of other people because we wanted to see if the roof could work with alignments. And at Karahan Tepe, it works perfectly with our winter solstice alignment. You can have a roof on it, but you think about it, you have to have openings in any structure. You can't have just closed off. It'll be pitch black, if you got if it's fully covered over. So you have to have openings, you have to have ways to get in, you have to have ways that air can get in, light can get in, and everything else. And very simply using, you look at the old style structures from Native Americans and Norwegian places and other such things. And it can work both ways. So you can have roofs and you can have openings to observe alignments. It would make it even more accurate if you have a kind of window area. You were talking about windows earlier, and where you're observing from one spot, one seat, looking out, and you're watching things move across, things like this. And so there's no reason why both couldn't coexist. But at this present moment, I don't know about the roofing because no evidence has been found, and there's not enough of the grooves on top of pillars. They should be like long grooves rather than cut marks. Not enough of them have been found, I don't think, to prove that. But like I say, I'm open to anything. I mean, one theory that Andrew's put forward, I've discussed this with him a lot, is that you build the sites without the roofs initially, you get all the alignments in place, you mark everything, you carve the symbology to go with those alignments and the stars and the constellations and everything else, the solstices, and then you can put roofs on and leave openings for certain things if you want to keep observing them. Things like this. And so later they may have added them. So there's different debates about this, but I don't think it's one or the other. I don't think one disproves the other either.
Now, the page that I have up here, which we've got central pillars in D, we have them in C, we have them in B, H. I'm just going off my memory. You're the expert. Is each one of these, are they orientated to a different constellation? One, and two, the stars move over time. So for you to get the alignments, are you looking at computer software and star charts and rocking back the calendar to see where the alignments were at that period in time?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is you got to give credit to Andrew Collins here. He did all the work initially on Göbekli Tepe as such, and he focused on the north because there's these hole stones. You get these porthole stones to the general northwest, like sometimes northeast, depends. But what he found was each of the enclosures, kind of over time, they would be oriented to Cygnus, or the Deneb in Cygnus specifically. I think the setting of Deneb, and also the opposite side. There's a whole other theory as well. And so as that changed and moved and changed over the thousands of years or hundreds of years, the slight changing, rising or setting, then different enclosure would slightly be shifted that way, and then the next one would be slightly shifted that way to kind of keep recording it. So all the different enclosures have slightly different orientations. That's his theory. That's really valid. It's pretty solid. It's been checked scientifically. People kind of have verified it. Again, the roof idea may mess that up, but it doesn't matter because, again, you can have openings in roofs. And to the south, there was an Italian researcher called Guido Magli, and he did a lot of very cool research, but he claims Sirius, the rising of Sirius, will start to be witnessed at this time. That's virtually opposite in the sky to Cygnus, so he believes it was actually facing south. So even people like Robert Schoch and Freddie Silver and others have put ideas to the south because of Orion, because of Taurus and other such things.
Pleiades,
yeah, and everything else. And so there's that going on. So this is all to do with the stars, mind you. Okay, so the stars interesting. It's been done quite thoroughly. But when we discovered a solar alignment at Karahan Tepe, that's when things really took off for me and JJ. We realized something profound, because the Karahan Tepe alignment is so blatantly obvious. I don't know if you can flip to the page later in the book or anything. It's called the solstice, Karahan Tepe solstice alignments or something. And that, you have a very specific point on the horizon where the sun rises like through the year, from the kind of north to the south on the horizon. At the very southern point, you have the winter solstice sunrise, the extreme point, and it rises. It rises exactly on the horizon. We went to witness this for over a couple of years period, and the light, as it 10 minutes after sunrise, shines through this porthole stone you can see on the bottom left there, and illuminates the stone head at Karahan Tepe for 45 minutes, and then that's it. It never does it again for another year. It only works on that particular extreme point of this very oblique angle of the sun coming through. And so that proved to us they were studying the sun, at least, and it verified to us, it verified that they were obviously looking at the stars as well, because even that night that happens, Andrew did some research on this with Rodney Hale, and we looked into it as well. We're finding links with Venus rising, we're finding links with the moon during the summer solstice. The moon would rise at the same time as the sun, the same position as the sun, and move in the same route across the sky. And so the bright full moon could shine through that whole stone and illuminate the stone head. Now, this doesn't work at any other time of year, and it's only moved by 1.5 degrees over 10,000 years, or 11,000 years, sorry. And so when we traced it back and did it all on Stellarium using computer programs, we found that the stone head gets illuminated even better. So it's an astonishing thing to witness this. You can go there and witness it on the winter solstice now, and yet none of the archaeologists or the site managers have anything to do with it. They completely dismiss it, and yet you can witness it with your own eyes. This head getting light moving around this head over a 45-minute period. If you check out our videos, we've got like time lapses of it, and we're just like, what the hell, Right. So that to me, when you got proof like that, it verifies all the other stuff Andrew, Robert, all these other people, other people have done. It proves it, because trying to prove the stars is hard, because you can say, no, they were looking at those stars through these different pillars. But when you've got a particular thing illuminating a certain thing through a small gap, only works on one time of year for like 2 or 3 days at the extreme point of the year, you're onto something. You got something solid to work with. And I think that's, we've had people look at it, archaeoastronomers, we've had specialists look at it, and they can't really deny it. It's like millions to one chance of it happening by chance.
Can I ask you, I don't want to get too sideways into this, but it's a good time to bring this up. Karahan Tepe is unique in that we have the introduction of it's older than I was going to say newer. It's newer because it's older. It's the OG site at the moment, but it's got a 3D human head, and there's also representations of, now I don't want to go God here, but it seems like there's a serpent aspect that is playing out, and we have a 3D human relief that is there. And we don't have those representations at Gobekli Tepe, which came later. What do you think?
Oh, sorry, no. Göbekli Tepe is older than Karahan Tepe. I want to get that clear. Just a few hundred years, mind you, a couple of hundred years. But yes, I know what you mean. Karahan Tepe is unique, utterly unique. There's nothing else has been found like it. You have these 18-foot wide pit. You actually see it behind me here, this side here. That's actually it. They've actually got it on my t-shirt as well. There you go. And that's called the AB pit, or the pillar shrine, which Andrew's called it. And this has got like 10 of these upright pillars, like 4 or 5 feet tall. And these are carved out of bedrock. It's carved. They've carved away everything around it and left these pillars, like these monoliths. And then it's got a freestanding stone like this, like this curved serpent. It's like, what the hell? And his head sticking out the side, and it's like this big. It's 3 times the size of your head. And that's the thing that gets illuminated through this hole over there, which is only 70 centimeters wide. with the sun shining on the opposite side of the main enclosure, coming through 2 T-pillars in the middle, precisely through the hole, illuminating. It's like, what the hell? I mean, this is like seriously sophisticated that they've managed to pull that off and actually create this winter solstice calendar, which could be used to reset the calendar every year. Then you can work everything else around that, the stars and everything else. And so it's just, and it's unique, and that's just one aspect of Karahan Tepe, which is unique, because you've got serpents carved everywhere. You've got serpent channels going into this pit. You've got like some of the T-pillars are big serpents on the front of them. There's lots of leopards represented there as well. We've now found this equinox alignment as well, which we think is going to be proven to be correct. And that is the head sort of faces to the east, but his eyes look towards the hole where the sunlight comes from the winter solstice, but it faces east towards the equinox. And we believe there's a channel which is still covered over by rubble. They're still excavating it. And we believe there's a channel going to the east, and it would be like the head would be facing towards the rising of Leo on the horizon in 11,000 years ago at the equinoxes. And so that's the same as the Sphinx would have done.
That's right.
Looking towards Leo rising, to the east again. So it's the same principle. And so it could have originated at Karahan Tepe, this whole idea of the Sphinx and other such ideas of observing Leo, the age of Leo, where this was all taking place. So there's lots of possibilities with this. And the fact is, you've got the leopard represented more than any other animal apart from the serpent at Karahan Tepe. And the leopard is really, I believe, it's like a representation of the Sphinx. I'm not saying the Sphinx is a leopard, but it's the same principle. It's the same Leonine astrological sign, the Leo sign. And so so there's lots to consider, lots of research still being carried out, but we need more excavation done. We're waiting for the archaeologists to pull their finger out and get more work done, because there's loads of rubble still there, which when removed, more evidence of what these sites were used for will come forth.
I'm sorry I misspoke or was misunderstood about the 200 years. When I was saying newer, that 200-year gap, to see the shift where at Göbekli Tepe there isn't humans, the human form is represented, but it's represented in squares. I don't know how a better way to put it, geometrically, right? But at Karahan, now we've got a human face, 3D, extended out and carved. And why do you think that shift happened so quickly? Because 200 years is nothing; it's a blip.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean,
shift. And geographically, they're neighbors, right? They're right there.
Yeah, they're only like 20 miles or something from each other. It's not that far. And it's like, I mean, they could have been contemporary. I mean, don't get me wrong. We don't, it's all a bit vague, to be honest with you, but they're not even really, even the archaeologists don't want to put the dates out about Göbekli Tepe, but they've said it's 9,400 BC, but there was a big thing that came out like a year and a half ago, which claimed Karahan Tepe was older than Göbekli Tepe. And it was a big sensation. It was in the news and everything. And so loads of people kind of still think that's the case, but when you go back and actually look at the research that was done, the site itself, the construction of the site is 9,400 onwards BC. And so, but they found evidence of people occupying and hanging out in the area, hunter-gatherers, if you like. And there's loads of flints and tools and pieces of, worked stone, little pieces like using for like, things they were doing, hunter-gatherers. They go back a few hundred years before Göbekli Tepe, but they weren't really doing anything then. And so that's why it's become confusing for people. But to general sense, they're all pretty much contemporary. But Göbekli Tepe, seems to be proof at the moment of it being slightly earlier, but this could all change. I mean, the excavations are still taking place. There's sites like Sayburç, which are mind-blowing. There's Ayan Lahoyak, there's Sefer Tepe, there's Harbet Zuvan. These are all in the same area. It's just a handful of sites, and the stuff that's coming out of there is amazing. It's just really astonishing that there's so many of these places now. I think we need to kind of put that in perspective, that it's not just one or two places, it's a vast area. And Sayburç, for instance, I mean, this has got this beautiful carved out of bedrock panel. It's like an enclosure carved out of bedrock with this panel, with this man standing there holding his part with a v-neck and a weird hat, with these sort of leopards and a bull and everything, this guy jumping, and it's like, what the hell, this is incredible. And then you look at the name of Sayburç, Sayburç, the little thing on the sea, that actually means it means, like, say itself, I think, means counting or count. And birch means sign of the zodiac, or sign of the horoscope. In Kurdish, it means like a sort of watchtower or something like this. So you've got these, just within one name, you've got possibly what the site was used for. And it could be a name that's just been passed down generation after generation, and it's never changed. It's that general area, because they built a whole village over the top of Sayburç, and now they're finding all this whole site there. They're actually going to demolish the whole village, unfortunately, and like move people off. But so there's so much more going on here, and even the names kind of give things away now, because even the original name of Karahan Tepe wasn't Karahan Tepe. This was given to the site in 1997 by Bahattin Selik, a local archaeologist. Karahan Tepe strangely means a dark lord or something, but the original name is Göbekli Tepe, and Andrew did some analysis. I did some other analysis on it, and that name actually means has a feminine root. Ketch means a feminine root, like a goddess, like a daughter, like a maiden, like a female. So it has this, potentially it was a feminine site. It may have been a goddess site as well. So you get little things like this in the names, which are now coming to light, which could give some meaning to what these sites were about.
Yeah. And let's go back to the zodiac part of this, and to the count part. And specifically, when we talk about this, we talk about Pillar 43. Now, we've just mentioned Leo, right? We've mentioned the Sphinx. We have what's going on at Karahan. We have what's going on at Göbekli Tepe. And if we rock back the calendars on all of these, there's been a lot of excellent research into this area. And at 10,700 BC, right, the magic number, right? That's the magic number. That's Leo rising in the east. And are you suggesting that the alignments at Gobekli Tepe at 10,700 BC are pointing to Leo rising? 1, 2, that would lock in the dates for Robert Schoch and John Anthony West and Robert Bauval and Hancock and others that have also looked at that same calendar year, 10,700 BC, with the Sphinx and the alignments of other things too on the Giza Plateau that take it back to 10,700 BC. Is that what you're suggesting here? That is the number on the calendar where all of this is aligning to the same thing?
Yeah, this is this here. What I've done for this little kind of spread here is look at the research that's been put forward. Really, already there's several excellent research, like Martin Sweatman, Andrew Collins, even Hancock's put some ideas forward. You've got Gwigli Magli again; he's done some stuff as well. But really, what we're looking at, the idea you're talking about, I think, is like Hancock and Martin Sweatman developed this one, where they think this is like a kind of picture of the sky as such, the constellations, when the Younger Dryas was happening, like 10,700, 10,900 BC. So we're talking 1,000 or more years before, Göbekli Tepe being built as such. And so this is like a sort of memory of what was happening. And it was like a warning to future generations to, watch out for if you see this in the sky again. Because you've got constellations there. You've got like Scorpio, you've got like what I believe is Cygnus. Andrew does as well, the sort of vulture type statue there, carving there. You've got other features there as well, which could represent different things. It's very confusing. It's hard to know what's what, but people have analyzed this and come to these different conclusions. The ball in the center is really interesting because at the center of T pillars you often have holes as well, or little balls, little circles carved. You actually get that on the T inside a Marumuru in Peru, funnily enough, a little kind of circle there.
Yeah, I know. When you go up to that at a Marumuru and put your face there and look, it's right there.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's right there. Now, but the vulture seems to be here on pillar 43.
Yeah.
And I brought this up to a lot of researchers, and they don't see it the way that I see it.
Right.
But man, the vulture is either holding up a planet, is holding the sun, is holding the moon, but I don't think it's holding a rock, and I don't think that that's a functional part of the pillar. I think that is something going on with the constellations and the alignment at that moment. That's what I see.
No, for sure. I mean, Martin Sweatman says that's the sun at the winter solstice in 10,950 BC. And this was the time of the younger droids. I'm fascinated that he talks about the winter solstice, considering the discovery me and JJ made at Karahan Tepe. If you look at Andrew's book, Göbekli Tepe, Genesis of the Gods, that to him is the celestial pole. So that's like the kind of northern point of the sky where everything circles around, and everything he thinks everything kind of fits with that. And so there's different interpretations, but they're all generally going towards the same thing. And I think there's some truth in all of it. And I think as more of the site gets excavated, as more of the stones get decoded, we're going to find the story continuing and like developing. And this is why I think this is a memory space. This is like recording all these different things at different times,
for sure,
in different ways, in a symbolic way, in an abstract symbolic way. And so so I think there's a lot more to this than meets the eye, and we don't know. It's like if you were to try and create something in art today to describe a time of the sky in history, what would you come up with? It might be completely different. So you just don't, so you got to try and get into the mindset and understand how these people were living and thinking to kind of try and decode this.
I want to get two more questions in before we wrap, and probably the two most important questions that everybody wants to know. Number one, deliberately buried. And those words, I always go back to Hugh, Stanley Kubrick's, Arthur C. Clarke's 2001: A Space Odyssey, when they go to the moon and they pull out the maps, right? And they're and he goes, deliberately buried. Yes, deliberately buried, right? And they make a point of it because that's crazy. Deliberately buried. And so was Gobekli Tepe. Now, why? What's to preserve it for us? For them to abandon the site and come back later and unbury it and get its use going again? Is it an archive? Was there danger? Were they being attacked? Was it cosmic? Why bury a site like this?
Yeah, I think you've kind of answered the question pretty accurately. But I think it's a combination of these different things. I think there was firstly, Klaus Schmidt, he came to the conclusion that the whole site was completely buried at the end of its use, and possibly certain parts of it were buried during its use and built on top of, and things like this. A new theory put together by the current archaeologists, they've proven this, and it's pretty solid actually, that some of it, because there's lots of structures now they found around the main enclosures, they kind of collapsed in, and actually there's proof of that now. You can see the sloping in the kind of different levels of strata and things like that. So it may have partly collapsed in on itself, and then they probably tried to preserve it, and there's evidence they tried to put things back in place and rebuild it. But then over time they did decide to move on, and they did completely bury it deliberately as well. So the new theory is trying to put forward that it was completely accidentally filled in and not buried by people, but it's not the case. There's definitely some deliberate burial going on here. And this has been proven as well at Karahan Tepe. Neshmi Karal, who's the current head archaeologist at Karahan Tepe, has written a paper, peer-reviewed, scientifically published, about enclosure AB, or the pillar shrine where the stone head is, the pillars, and that is deliberately buried, different layers with big flagstones placed on top to definitely preserve it. There's even different soils and pebbles were placed in layers and things like this. And so we know they had an act of deliberate burial at this time. It was a real thing. And so, yeah, you have to question why. I mean, if we look at the memory space idea, or we're looking at a preservation of knowledge over thousands of years, perhaps, that they want to preserve it. They have to preserve it. They can't just abandon it. They have to preserve it. You know, maybe they were planning to move on. Maybe there was solar flare activity. Maybe there was different groups coming in, threatening their existence. Maybe they ran out of wheat. Who knows? We don't know. Maybe there was a drought. You came up with a few different good ideas there. I mentioned some of these ideas in the book as well. But something made them move on, and they did deliberate burial. But the thing is, even if they were doing that, the amount of work and manpower to complete the burial of the site was vastly superior to the building of the site. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of tons of rock and earth placed to close down these sites. And we're not talking one site got buried, all of them did. None of them were exposed, and this is how they all survived. This is why I believe these are going to be the oldest megaliths on the planet, because they were preserved under the ground, and that kind of maintained them. And they were buried very well. Unbelievably, you look at like pillar 43 here, the vulture stone. It's in almost perfect condition.
It's perfect.
They weren't just chucking stones at it and mud to fill it up. They were placing it really softly and carefully to preserve and maintain, because they knew they had to do that. So it may have been a ritual thing to them that they had to close down and bury the site like they bury their dead. You know, we don't know. It could have ritualistic, ceremonial purposes, or it could have been because they wanted to preserve something for future generations. And this, to me, that's part of it. I think that they had this compassion. They saw into the future. They understood that the nature of time through their studying of the stars and precession and everything else. So they knew their later ancestors, their offspring, thousands of years later, were going to eventually discover this. We must remember as well, you think about the location of this. It's Shanlurfa. This is the ancient city of Edessa. This is like different cultures and tribes, armies went through this area, and none of them knew about Göbekli Tepe, any of these sites. It was completely hidden from history from 8,000, 9,000 years ago.
Isn't that crazy? And you have all the other sides of it. Abraham, right? Well, I mean, we can continue with, I mean, it's not like there wasn't people here. This was like the center of everything at that time, and nobody knew. Now, I don't want to run out of time, so let's just bring up this point as quickly as possible. The dating of 9400 BC, the carbon dating, comes from the burial trash, the garbage, right? Okay, the leftovers. But that's dating that. The site itself is much, much older, right? If I'm understanding correctly, the carbon dating comes from the refuse.
Well, yeah, I think at Göbekli Tepe, they actually, because it's got there's these walls kind of around the edge of the enclosure, sort of almost holding up the T-pillars around the circle. But I think they were added later, because you can see here that these were all decorated. So I think they were standing free, kind of, slotted in at the bottom or something like that. So, and then they dated the very bottom underneath the walls of some stuff they found there, some, stuff they could carbon date. That's where they got most of the dating from. So they were doing it from the bedrock layer right at the bottom, right? So it's pretty solid, and it makes 9,600 BC makes sense with the end of the Younger Dryas as well. But now we know there's other sites that were older. I mentioned these in the book, that it does throw everything up, as a possibility of things being older. Plus, we found evidence of the area around Karahan Tepe being older than the site itself, going into the Ice Age. So the jury's out. The excavations are going on. Every year they excavate for 4 or 5 months in the summer. Every year we go back twice a year. We take, do tours and all that stuff. But we go there deliberately in September, because that's the end of the excavation season, so we can see the new discoveries. There were some fantastic new discoveries at the end of last year, which blew our minds. This 7.5 foot statue There was this sort of vulture statue and all these other artifacts. This beautiful boar, huge life-size boar was found at Göbekli Tepe, which was painted. They found it had red, black, and white paint. So now we're thinking all the sites may have been painted as well. They weren't just like stone color. So there may have been a whole colorful element to all this as well.
Well, yeah.
So,
Why would we? That goes to all of, in my opinion, all of the megalithic ancient sites around the world. We see them as washed out stones. We see them as beige or red or whatever it is. They were all painted. Of course they were.
Might well have been.
You don't leave your house unpainted, right? You
That's
just
true,
don't do it. You don't do it.
They found evidence of it. They got ochre. They got different things they were drawing from. And this is a very early time they were doing this as well. And so they were, you can see how artistic they were just in the stonework. So you can imagine they were kind of using color as well. I mean, why not? I mean,
there's cave painting that goes back 30, 40, 50,000 years all around the world. So it's not like ancient civilizations didn't understand pigments and painting.
Yes.
So I would assume, right? Now, the last question, I'm going to say the big one for last, the handbags. All right. Now I'm going handbags. You've got 2 or 3 or 4 different. This argument, man. I had somebody on the show last month, and we went on and on about this. He thinks it's celestial. He thinks it's part of a constellation, and it's the sun, and it's a star pattern. Whatever. No. I'm going Hermes. I'm going Hermes. Maybe Yves Saint Laurent. But I'm going handbag here. I'm going handbag.
Okay, all right. You're in the same boat as Hancock. He likes his man bags, he calls them.
Yeah.
We'll have to get some made up and sort of carry them around and stuff. But there's I mean, that's what they look like. They look like kind of little man bags, handbags, and things like that. I mean, obviously people compare them with the Sumerian and Babylonian kind of gods holding the bags in their
Mayan
hand.
too, Aztec.
Olmec.
So it's
Olmec. Well, I've seen some in the British Museum. They got some of the stone. They're like solid stone bag shaped things, look like kind of funky handbags. And so there's a case for that for sure. They were carrying sacraments in it. They were carrying special objects or special sacred things, like mushrooms, for instance, or other things. We don't know. We just don't know. But there's other people say they're like representations of the enclosures as you're looking, towards them, and there's a roof on them. If you look at the site Chiano, again, I keep bringing that up, it looks like the skull house from above. It looks like the shape of the skull house, which has this kind of handbag shape. It's like 40 feet wide, mind you. And so, there's different, I think this Gobekli Magli, he kind of thinks they're representations of the Babylonian houses in the sky, representing Enlil and Enki as well. So we're coming back to the Anunnaki idea that the 2 gods, the central pillars, may have been representations of Enlil and Enki. If you go back to the Anunnaki traditions of Sumeria, which is valid, I mean, that's something we've written about, myself and J.J. Ainsworth. The connection with the Sumerian myths and legends is astonishing.
All I can do is trust my eyes. And you see it repeated over and over again from different cultures around the world. And the the thing that stands out with all of it is we don't know. Now, it was important enough to carve it into stone, right, forever, for it to be there, but we don't know what they represent. It's mind blowing, and that's clearly what I see here. And the elephant at the top of the middle handbag is also very curious to me as well. Give my best to JJ, and I miss you guys, and I can't wait to see you at some point this year in 2024 in our travels around the world. We'll get a chance to hang out. Where can everybody get the book?
Yeah, they can get it from woodenbooks.com. They can get it. I think they can get it from Amazon in most places now. It's taken a while to get around the world, but all my stuff's on megalithomania.co.uk. We've got another. People can check out. We've got articles on this on Graham Hancock's website on ancientorigins.net. And they can find out everything we're up to. I mean, like yourself, we take groups out to Turkey regularly. People want to join. It's astonishing experience to actually go there while this is all happening, while it's all being excavated, because we've been to sites that haven't even been excavated yet and finding things there which we haven't even had a chance to talk about. So it's just astonishing time to be alive and witness this, I think.
Yeah, I can't wait for the next conversation that we have here on Fade to Black. And I'm going to say this. We're already off of the network, so take a few seconds to say this. This is my personal thing, but there is nothing like the smell of giant rocks in the morning. Is that the best or what?
It's definitely the best. Yeah, absolutely.
It is the craziest thing that the smell of rocks is just incredible. Hugh, all my best to JJ. You behave. I can't wait for our next conversation. Be safe out there, my friend. Perfect night on the show. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hugh Newman, everybody. Now, Megalithomania, the links are below. They're right there. We've got them on our website and, of course, on social media. Perfect conversation tonight. I haven't done a night on Gobekli Tepe, a full night for a minute, and felt really good to go and just Gobekli Tepe. Thank you, Hugh. Perfect show. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Jonacide. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Drew, thank you for everything, my man. Music is Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. Cannot be downloaded, broadcast, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black of the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, right here, Dr. Heather Lynn, Xenoarchaeology. Until tomorrow night, Gobekli Tepe.